December 23rd, 2023. Well, we haven't really looked a whole lot at the situation in the Russia-Ukraine war in a while. And actually, it looks like developments have been proceeding fairly significantly while we've been kind of focused on other issues, which of course makes a lot of sense. I mean, with everything happening domestically and so forth. But basically, it looks as if the Russians have completed the training of many military units that have been talked about previously, and that expand their military in the Ukraine theaters up to around 600,000 troops now, and they're now engaged in wide-scale offensive operations. It's pretty much all along the lines from on the front that would from basically up the Kharkiv region down to I guess Volodar. That in that area, it just looks as if there's a series of Russian attacks against several cities and strongholds of the Ukrainian forces. And while the motion is not, we'll say this is not a blitzkrieg by any means, but it is, but compared to what we've been seeing up till now, it is fairly significant offensive operation. There is movement. And the Russians are clearly gaining ground in these conflicts there. While if you go down to the Kherson front and their little the Kritsky marine operation, apparently the Russians have been able to inflict fairly heavy casualties, and some people claim that there's only about 100 Ukrainian Marines left on the Russian side of the river. And then in the salient that they were fighting at all summer, the Russians are counterattacking at Rivova. So it seems as if there's the sort of the tide has turned. The Russians clearly have the initiative overall now, and of course we've gone through 3 months without any additional aid being appropriated by the U.S. Congress for the Ukrainians. So, and it looks as if aid from Europe is also dried up to some extent. So I think this is a significant factor in what's happening. You have a strengthened Russian military and less supplied Ukrainian military than what had been previously. Well, if you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and of course you can click the bell for notifications if you haven't already. Yeah, so that's kind of the situation that we're having now. It's hard. It doesn't look to me like that necessarily will be a massive, defeat for the Ukrainians at this point by any means. In other words, but it's also possible that the attrition will wear them down to where they'll have to retreat from certain frontline positions and go on the defensive. Another interesting piece of development has been that there's been a proposal in Ukraine to mobilize something like 450,000 to 500,000 more troops, and discussions have been in place to even start conscripting women. So this shows how depleted the Ukrainians have been. The part of this mobilization would be to create new brigades of troops, but they also claim that they need about 20,000 conscripts per month to replace the losses. This would be both, I guess, killed and wounded. And so, effectively, and of course, in the wintertime, you're also going to be having people suffering from the climate, if you will, the freezing and so forth. I mean, this is a really horrible situation that the people on both sides are in out in these trenches, obviously. So, and anyhow, that indicates that the Ukrainian casualties are pretty heavy, and it's also interesting that so far apparently that this plan has not been officially signed. There is an effort also to try to get Ukrainians that have fled the country into Europe and so forth to return to fight. And I don't understand how this is going to work exactly. Um, if I guess they can certainly ask them to come back. I don't know whether or not they really are going to be deported from European countries into Ukraine so they can be conscripted or not. There's certainly, it seems as if the Ukrainians are using governments using press gangs to grab people who have been not so willing to report and get them into the military. So this doesn't look too good for the Ukrainian future here. And meanwhile, as we all know and discussed earlier, and in fact, I think it's certainly the Republicans that are seeing the situation on their own southern border as a complete disaster. And so they have effectively, in the Senate, tied down the $106 billion or whatever it is bill, which would support a variety of issues, including $61 billion for Ukraine, has been tied to border security measures that the Democrats have not been willing to approve of so far. It's hard to know exactly how that's going to end up, but I've been impressed so far that the Republicans in the Senate have held pretty firm on this. And in fact, apparently nothing is going to happen until next year. At least that's the way it looks like now. Everybody's gone home for Christmas. And so probably it'll be after New Year's before that thing really makes any advance in Congress. And so, and even if something gets through the Senate, it may be a lot more difficult getting it through the House, depending on what happens. And remember that with the slim majority the Republicans have, they can't really afford to have another speaker removed, or who knows what would happen. I mean, we're like I said, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how this pans out. The Biden administration, of course, has been pursuing the policy, obviously, of allowing as many false asylum claims to be filed and let into the country, and of course, ultimately for their own political purposes, they hope that eventually these people or their offspring, one of the two, will become citizens. The offspring, presumably the ones born here, will become citizens. Of course, there's large numbers of single males coming into the country, and so that has a limited prospect unless they're legalized. So, but this is a factor that might indicate that this could go on for some time with no additional significant aid to Ukraine. There are going to be allegedly the Netherlands are going to provide the first 18 F-16s, and this may have some impact, although it's hard to know what 18 additional airplanes will really do. I mean, basically, to me, this seems to be more to replace the losses that the Ukraine has suffered. However, the F-16s, at least in air-to-air mode, will presumably be equipped with some variant of the U.S. AMRAAM missile, which will be a step ahead of what the Ukrainians had previously with their 1980s vintage Russian missiles and their MiG-29s and so forth. So, although I suppose these will be earlier variants, I would assume that they'll get, and still, it's a very potent missile, so that'll pose some issues for the Russians, I'm sure. However, even if they achieve a certain level of exchange ratio, you have to consider also how are they going to maintain these planes? Do we have ground crews trained to handle the maintenance of the F-16? That logistics aspect is going to be very critical, and of course, where will they be based? And of course, the Russians are fully prepared to use missile attacks on the bases. But this is something will be coming up in the year ahead, I guess, to see what the introduction of F-16s to the battle will be. The problem is they weren't there in time for the big offensive in the summer, and of course, as we've been pointing out, the Ukrainians are losing a lot of troops, and so. And a lot of the equipment that was provided has been destroyed in the offensive, and now I think the Russians are gaining ground. there is a very recent development of supposedly the Ukrainians are claiming they shot down 3 Russian Su-34s in the Kherson region. And it's hard to know what really happened on that, whether that's real or not. There seems to be some evidence of at least one plane actually being downed. And it may well be the case that they might have moved some sort of anti-aircraft system into the area, because the Russians have been readily bombing in that area, so that it's possible that an advanced Western anti-aircraft system was moved into the area, perhaps a Patriot or something else. And that could be the explanation. We'll have to see how that pans out. And of course, but overall, it looks like the Russian offensive is moving ahead, and that's kind of a bit of a change from the way it had been up to now. But I think a lot of this is due to the introduction of all these additional Russian units that have been trained throughout the year. They're now in combat, and so anyway, that's kind of what we have on that subject. Before I leave this, I will like to mention something. It looks like that the Jack Smith's attempt to do a preemptive move to the Supreme Court against Trump has been rejected by the Supreme Court. So now he's going to have to work his way through the appellate court first. Of course, that appellate court is probably more favorable to the Democrat side by far than the Supreme Court would be, if political bias has anything to do with the outcome. So we'll have to see how that plays out. And it looks like at the moment that the trial for early May in D.C. may be delayed significantly. But that's something that's yet to be determined. But it looks like that's the case. So anyway, I'll be wrapping this up for now, and I will, of course, be posting this on Rumble as well, and we will my addresses and my social media accounts are in the description below. So all for now.